Welcome back to Nether Region's podcast, where we're going to get down and we're going to get dirty. We're going to get really rowdy today because we're talking about partying. There's kind of three parts. I'm going to get my notes for this. There's going to be three kind of parts to today's podcast. One's going to be about like clubbing and the partying atmosphere. Then kind of the topic of alcohol and, age and shifting views towards alcohol for me and for a lot of people at the moment. And then finally, we're going to talk about drugs and smoking and vaping and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be very, very interesting. And yeah, I'm really excited to talk about it. So let's roll the intro. Welcome back. I originally had this episode, kind of scheduled out because I wanted to talk about alcohol and drugs, but I kind of changed that. And the reason that I changed this episode from alcohol and drugs to more of the broader thing of partying was because when I was out the other night, I noticed that I was dancing around with all my friends and stuff, and we were like just enjoying the music, but I could tell that I wasn't really present in that moment. And I always feel this when I go out, and maybe you do too, but whenever I'm dancing, I get so in my head and overthinking. This is mostly in a social atmosphere. Like I can dance at the dance studio and like dance in concerts and productions, no worries. But it's when I'm in these scenarios, like in social settings, where I just like start to overthink everything I'm doing, everything I'm wearing, everything like that. And I'm not sure if it's because of like coming from this queer, kind of perspective and thinking that I could be putting myself in danger, I guess, by expressing myself in a certain way, or maybe it's some internalized homophobia or something like that. But I think that, I always tend to overthink as soon as I get into that kind of atmosphere. So that's what made me want to change this from an episode about alcohol and drugs to more of navigating the partying and clubbing lifestyle, where alcohol and drugs are an inherent part of that, but also talking about other things outside of that. So I wanted to talk about partying and clubbing in general. And I think in those moments the other night where I was overthinking while dancing and like all these people were watching me, and it was really weird because it wasn't just like it was a bunch of like young people, there was like lots of older people there, and there's something about that just makes me feel so not insecure because I know I'm better than them. No, but I tend to overthink it a lot, and I feel like I start to think that what if I'm too much of this? What if I'm too much of that? Like, what if I'm like not attractive enough to be getting with people that I want to get with, or to attract people? Or what if I'm too attractive where I'm drawing the attention of people who I don't want the attention of, and that could lead on to me getting into trouble and into an uncomfortable situation. But I didn't really feel safe. And I feel like that's what I feel a lot of the time when I go out. And I feel like that's why I'm kind of not vibing with the idea of going out. And I think it depends on the people that you go out with, and especially the intentions that you go out on the town with, or go clubbing or go partying with. The intentions that you set when you're going out and interacting with lots of different people. I think setting a baseline or setting an expectation of what you want the night to be can both be really damaging and can both be really helpful. I think for me, a lot of the time, I won't have an intention for the night, and maybe it'll start off with me being just wanting to I just see where the night takes me and my friends, but it can then go into I want to get with someone, I want to get with this person, and that can lead to some not great decisions, especially when induced with alcohol, which we'll get into later. But I'm just I don't want to miss anything. But the other night I was like just thinking about who I wanted to get with in the middle of dancing. I realized that I wasn't being present, and I'm not sure if you feel this too, but recently in the last couple of times that I've been out, I've had this expectation of getting with people, and that doesn't always go well because I'm very, very picky with who I will allow myself to be attracted to, and who I think is attractive and good for me. Sometimes I just notice that I'm like not disassociating, but just like zoning out and like focusing on the door and focusing on the people who are coming in and being like, oh, are they attractive? Yes, no, or I want to get with them. And it's like, it's not helpful to having a good night. And I think I'm in the process of learning to overcome that at the moment, and just trying to set an intention for the night and not let it be guided in a way out of just like the expectations that we're told through like movies and stuff that present going out as such a exciting time full of getting with people and being incredibly drunk and on drugs and stuff like that. I feel like setting your own intention and not letting yourself be influenced or persuaded by what you deem as being a good time or what you think your night should look like. I think doing what you want and setting out that intention from the very start sets you out for a good night. But yeah, I feel like going into anything with good intentions is desirable. Because like regardless of any behavior, I think going in with good intentions is amazing, because that's all that you can control. And I was talking about this with my dad the other day, because we were talking about, he had to do this interview. We were doing this interview for this project that I'm involved with at the moment, and he had to be interviewed for it, and was talking about me and like our experiences and stuff. And he was talking about how he was really worried that, you know, the people who, I'm trying not to break my my non-disclosure agreement. He was really worried that they would take what he was saying and, shift it like they do on those TV shows and like reality TV shows and just in the media in general. He was worried that they would, manipulate his words and they might turn him into a villain and stuff. And obviously I was saying to him, I was like, they're not going to do that. They were really, really sweet on the project, not the TV show, the project, on this specific project. And, I think they weren't going to present me as a villain, because I think they were more going for a sympathy story anyway. But the way that I tried to reassure my dad was by saying that you've gone into it with good intentions, and if that's all that you can do. And he was still worried, because he was like, it doesn't matter what you do, like somebody else has that footage and stuff, like they can do whatever they want. And we kind of had this, it wasn't a bickering, but it was kind of this two opposing views, and it was really, really interesting to me, because I'd kind of tried to reassure him and say that these people at this project can't manipulate what you're saying, because you didn't say anything that was bad. Like, you were saying really, really sweet stuff about me. And yeah, he was just like really, really worried, and I found that just like it wasn't good to see, but it was also very interesting and enlightening. But anyway, I kind of just said to him, if you've gone into it with a good intention and you've done all that you can do, that's all that you can control. And there's going to be people inevitably that are going to do things that aren't always the best. So I think the only thing that you can control is your attitude and the way that you go into something. So yeah, I think going in with good intentions is all that we can control. But yeah, what was I going to say? Yeah, what people do outside of that is out of our control. But I had a question that I wanted to bring up in regards to my thing of getting with people and, looking at the door to see who's coming in and seeing if they're attractive and seeing whether I want to get with them or not, which is really, really just like not a good way of going about it. And I can recognize that. But I had the question of, do you think that in like a party or a club setting, do you have to like them? And like, what if, from my experience, what if they are like mean people, or they don't have like the best personality qualities? Like, you might know that they aren't right for you in an emotional or relationship sense, but if you're both attracted to each other, should you pursue that like in a party or club setting? And I feel like that's such a interesting concept, because from my own experience, I've gotten with people and had these situationships and stuff with people who, we've both been attracted to each other physically, but I felt like our personalities didn't really mix, and I felt like there was an imbalance of maturity and an imbalance of like self-growth and development, and just knowing ourselves and knowing what we wanted from each other and out of a relationship and whatever our situationship was. So I think in a relationship, I've kind of known what I want from that, but I think it gets very blurred and distorted. Oh, sorry. I just knocked the microphone. It gets very blurred and distorted when it's in this club setting, especially when it's enhanced and distorted by things like alcohol and drugs and stuff like that, which we're going to get into later. So yeah, going with the right intentions. I don't want to say that one more time. I'm so sick of saying good intentions. But yeah, going in with like knowing what you want, and I think that's all you can do. But as I was saying, like inevitably there will be people who don't go in with that mindset, and the idea of there being people who don't go in with the best intentions or with a good mindset or go into a club or a party setting with malicious intent is really, really worrying, especially in regards to, like, I'm so scared for some reason of being roofied or like having my friends roofied or taken advantage of, that like, I don't know whether it's just been instilled in with me. I'm not sure if you feel this too, but I'm so scared of being, taken advantage of in that way. So yeah, I think that's something that I'm constantly having to, kind of deal with and think about every time I go out. But I think there's like 3 tips that I've collated from my own experience and through things that have been told to me, which are pretty basic, but I feel like for a lot of the younger people who may be watching this or listening to this, I think it's important that you know these tips to ensure that you and your friends have a safe outing when you're at a party or at a club, especially with people who you either don't know or you don't know well enough to trust. And a lot of the time it can be people who you think you know and who you think you can trust, who will do really, really despicable things. So here are my 3 tips. The tip number 1 is to watch every drink you get be made. If someone's buying you a drink, watch that drink be made. And I know that especially where I live, there's some bartenders who are very, very sketchy, and not all of them. I think majority of bartenders are absolutely incredible, but I do know that there have been some cases where people have caught certain bartenders putting things into mostly girls' drinks and roofing them and then drugging them, which is so disgusting, and I don't understand how that can go through someone's head as being okay to do. But yeah, watch every single drink you get made from when it's made at the bartender to being given to you. Make sure that that's not being contaminated in any way. Which leads on to tip number 2, which is never leave a drink unattended. If you're putting a drink down and you don't have eyes on it the whole time, get a new drink. Don't pick that up. It's very likely, unfortunately, that in a setting like mostly a club, but also it could be at a party where a drink can be spiked and you can be drugged, and then we don't want to go down that road. So it may be really inconvenient because you have to get a new drink, and that's expensive. So yeah, to overcome that, never leave your drink unattended. But if you do, please go get another drink and don't consume that drink anymore. And the last one is to partner up and have locations on, have each other's plans for the night, have each other's numbers, have a group chat, have the Life 360 app. I know that today we were planning our schoolies thing with my friends, and we were talking about what are our things for what are our rules and vibes for going out to clubbing and partying and stuff, in terms of staying safe, but also allowing everyone to have the freedom to say go back home if they're not feeling it, or go back to someone else's house for whatever they want to do. Especially because majority of the people who I'm going with on schoolies are girls. It was unfortunately it was a matter of safety that we decided that we would partner up every time we go out, and at least go everywhere with a partner. And if you're going to be going back to someone's house, which may be inevitable, especially on schoolies where you're meeting new people, and you're doing lots of different activities. You may be leaving the club or the nightclub or whatever and going back to theirs. It's important that you communicate with your friends and with your partner, with your people. Have locations on, have a plan of the night, and yeah, I think just communicate and be looking out for each other is really, really important, because we all want to ensure that everyone is safe and having a good time. So yeah, that's my tips. Those are the vibes. And wait, I feel like just partnering up in general with like going out is the best way to go about it anyway. And doing things with friends the entire night and not straying away from that. Mostly because I have this thing about people who drink alone, especially people my age. It just seems like really, really sad. And I know that for me, if I was to ever get to a point where I was drinking alone, I would feel like I've gone wrong and I would feel like I like have a problem. That would be the warning sign if like you're drinking alone. But like I know some people who are like 13 or 14 who are having like a couple drinks every night at dinner with their parents, like a couple cruises. And I just think, how the fuck does that happen? Like that's not like healthy. That's just like not responsible in any way, especially on the parents' behalf. And I know that it's like they're their guardian and like they can parent however they want. But like you've got to look at the fact that this person's brain is not fully developed and you're encouraging or providing them with this literal poison that's going to impair their development, especially cognitively. Cognitively. And in that way, with like the parents supporting and reinforcing this behavior, like that just shows that like influences are so strong. And I think especially in Australia, our drinking culture is so ingrained within our society, and I think it's very, very normalized that overcoming the beliefs that we've just grown up with and the normalization of drinking what is poison. And I'm not trying to steer you away from drinking, because I think it's you are probably going to engage in alcohol if you haven't already. But I think it's important to not just be influenced by everyone else and have that peer pressure, but to actually consider whether you actually want to be drinking or not, and consider the motives for why you want to drink. I think if I was ever in a situation where I felt like I had to drink to ease some kind of pain, or to forget, or have anything that's never going to lead to something good, it's never going to, fix your problems. And I heard something in TikTok today that was like buffaloes, stay with me on this, buffaloes know through the thousands of years of their like adaptation that if they see storm clouds coming, because they don't want to get wet and they don't do that, they run towards the storm clouds that are approaching, because they know that if they run towards it, they're going to spend less time in the rain and eventually it'll pass, as opposed to running away from it, and those clouds are going to constantly be, raining on them. So I think very loosely, I feel like that applies to drinking and just running away from problems in general. I think you've got to face it, and suppressing your emotions with alcohol and with drugs and with any kind of substance that's going to alter your state of consciousness and state of awareness is really, really dangerous. So I think going into everything with good intentions and the right motives behind it is really, really important. But yeah, I know a lot of people who like they'll be drinking on like a weeknight and they'll be like, oh, like you're home alone. Like what's like, why? Like it just doesn't seem like right to me. Maybe I think that is possibly just me, but like I question that, and they'll be like, oh, I've just been like really, really hurting and stuff lately. And that's just, it makes me like so sad that they feel like that's what they have to depend on. Do you know what I mean? But I think there is a growing shift away from alcohol within the generations coming up, but I think also just across the whole board, and maybe this is just with me and my growing shift away from the need for alcohol, or the place of alcohol within social settings and stuff like that. But I'm going to talk about that right after I change the camera battery. Oh, and I'm back. Yeah. Also, thanks for watching this, or blah. Thank you for watching or listening to this. But as I was just saying, I think there's a growing shift away, at least for me, regarding alcohol and the place of that within social settings. And you know, I remember at 15 or 16, I didn't want to drink. I was so adamant that I was never going to drink in my life, and then I was like, I'm not going to drink till I'm 21 or until I'm 18. And like I kind of I didn't stick to that at all. But yeah, like I couldn't understand why you would want to drink, and I think I'm returning back to that mindset more now. But yeah, I didn't want to drink at the time at 15 and 16. I didn't want to drink something that didn't taste good, and that seems so like obvious. And I feel like I still share that same thing where I'm like, I don't want to drink something that tastes like where I have to gulp it down. But I feel like that comes back to people drinking for ulterior motives, where it's to get drunk and to forget and to not have control over their like bodies and stuff like that. But yeah, I feel like for me, I only want to drink alcohol. In the past, I've only wanted to drink alcohol if it tasted good, and that's why I feel like cruises and like Smirnoff Ices and lemon ruskies and cocktails and stuff that make alcohol not taste, or like negative 196s. They're like, all these ones taste like really, really good because you can't really taste the alcohol in them, and I think that's really, really dangerous, especially for young people. Drinking all this alcohol without really ever tasting it. And I think I'm becoming more drawn to the idea of mocktails and stuff. But in those times, and I think I'm still debating whether I'm going to be drinking or how much I'm going to be drinking, both on schoolies in a couple of weeks, but also for the rest of my life, and how drinking will be incorporated into my life, because I think it has been so normalized. But I recognize that it's dangerous, and I also recognize that it's such an but it's such a prominent thing within our culture and within society and within social settings and situations. So I think I'm still navigating how I'm going to incorporate it, or when I'm going to drink and stuff like that. But I know that like in the last couple of parties and within like the last couple of years, within the last couple of years of being 18, I've mostly been either drinking. I'm not trying to promote this in any way, by the way, but I think it's important to get a perspective, especially for the young people watching, or for people who may be reconsidering their stance on drinking and stuff like that. But I think in the past, I've either been drinking those drinks like cruisers and not cruisers, but like Smirnoff Ices and stuff that taste just like lemonade, or just taste like, they don't taste like alcohol. And I think I've either been doing that, or I've been really drawn to the idea of shots, especially like tequila shots, which I know a lot of people don't agree with. But I've been drawn to that because it's not making you bloated, it's not too many calories, and I don't want this to become a thing of calories, because I know how damaging that can be towards people, and throughout my own experience with that. But I think I've liked the idea of shots because it's, you're not drinking loads and loads of, these high sugar things with heaps of calories that make you bloated and feel terrible. Just an overload of sugar and alcohol is just not good and beneficial for your body or your mind. So yeah, having these shots was a way to reach that intention and reach that goal of becoming intoxicated and tipsy and stuff like that. But going back to the motives and stuff, I think also setting a level of how if you are going to drink, setting a level of how intoxicated you want to be, knowing your limits. That doesn't mean testing your limits by seeing how many drinks it takes for you to black out, because that's so scary. I'm so scared of blacking out. But yeah, I think setting an intention of how intoxicated you want to be is really important, and communicating that with a friend possibly, so that you can really keep each other accountable throughout the night and really check in with each other. Like, oh, is this person like, should I be offering them another drink? Is that going against what they'd said when they were sober? Because I know a lot of people who, when they're when they're in a alcohol induced state, they will be wanting to drink more alcohol, and it's going against what they had set out for the night. But I think it's just knowing the people who you're with, and just trying to look out for them the best that you can, but also respecting that they're going to do what they want to do. Yeah, I think just having a compassionate and kind approach to dealing with anyone in any situation is really, really beneficial and really, really important. So yeah, I feel like shots was a good way for me to not have to take too many calories, not have to drink too much liquid and just feel absolutely terrible, not be able to like walk around, but also be able to achieve or be able to become tipsy and stuff like that. Yeah, those are my. If you are going to drink, those are my thoughts. Those are my experiences, and you can learn from that what you will. But yeah, I think understanding, like, oh, what was I going to say? Yeah, and I think when I was at like that age of 15, 16, and not wanting to drink anything that didn't taste good, and when that was the benchmark and like the criteria, I didn't see, and sometimes still don't see, why anyone would want to drink. I feel like if something's not going to taste good, what are the other benefits of alcohol? Do you know what I mean? Like, it makes you feel shit. It's not good for your body. It's not good for your mind. And it's definitely not good for a developing brain. I think men's brains aren't done developing until like 25, 30, something like that. So that's your main, like, prior to that is your main years of drinking, especially from what's been promoted in movies and TV shows and just through life and advertisements in general. Like, that's your developing years, and where your brain's not fully developed, where your ability to assess risks is totally impaired and not fully developed. So I think drinking is never going to help that. And if you're not drinking for the good taste, what are you drinking it for? It's not good for anything. This just sounds like an anti-alcohol ad, this whole podcast. I'm not trying. I think there's definitely, for a lot of people, there are some benefits to drinking alcohol, and like, obviously there are, because like, I haven't drunk alcohol in like, I don't know how many months, but like, I can see myself drinking alcohol, especially approaching schoolies, and maybe that's because it's normalized, and like, you don't want, maybe it's the FOMO, and I also feel like if going back with like me going into or ending up in a situation where I'm at a club and I'm thinking about like, do I want to get with someone? And a lot of the time there's not anyone who I want to get with, but going into it and being in that situation where I'm looking at who I want to get with, and me thinking that if I'm not drinking alcohol, then I can't get with, like, I'm not going to be getting with anyone at that club or at that party or anything, because most likely they're going to be intoxicated, and, you know, that's going to impair their ability to consent to anything that's going to happen. And I think that's a really important thing to realize, is that when someone is in an alcohol-induced state, they cannot freely consent and fully consent to anything. So yeah, I think that's definitely something to keep in mind. And especially when you're both in an alcohol-induced state, you both can't fully consent. So I think that's where it's something to be aware of, and it's something to really, really keep in your minds. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but I think understanding why people drink, regardless, like, despite the damages that alcohol can cause, understanding why people drink for, like, the social lubricant that it presents, and that provides, I think that's something that can't be ignored. But I think when the benefits of something like alcohol as a social lubricant, I know a lot of people use it to have something in their hand or something to talk about, like, oh, what are you drinking? Like, what's the alcohol you're drinking? It's so damaging to be relying on something to compensate for, you know, not, I don't want to say anxiety, but I understand using it to make yourself feel comfortable. I'm really struggling to articulate this in a manner that's well thought. But I think when you're using something to improve your social abilities, and I think it can a lot of the time help with easing a lot of worries and anxieties. And I know that a lot of times I've done it for that reason, and I've used alcohol as a social lubricant. But I think when the thing you're using to improve your experiences is something, well, like, because at its very point, this is not going well, but alcohol is a poison. And when that starts to impair your physiological and your psychological functioning, it's impairing the thing that you set out to improve by the fact that drinking alcohol is going to damage your ability to socialize because it's impairing your mental functioning and your brain development. So I think that it's impairing your ability to do the very thing that you were using it to do, if that makes sense. So I think that's something to think about and consider whether the benefits that are given by alcohol and by drugs and stuff, whether they are outweighing the consequences of taking such a substance. Because I think that, like, aside from, like, heroin and cocaine, like meth and stuff, I think that alcohol is one of, like, the most dangerous of, like, drugs and stuff, in my opinion, purely because it's so normalized and because it's so heavily used, and because it's so accessible to people. But, like, at its very form, it's poison. Like, alcohol is literally used to clean, like, surfaces and stuff. Like, it shouldn't be consumed, I feel. But in saying that, like, we're still going to consume it, which sounds fucking terrible, but it's inevitable that people are going to continue to use alcohol, and I'm sure that in the future I'm going to consume alcohol, and maybe you will too. But I think, yeah, like, aside from all those very hard illicit drugs, alcohol is incredibly damaging, and it's important to realize it. And I think that with no research or experience to back this up, I feel like weed, although marijuana may not be as normalized within our society, I feel like weed is, like, it may be better for you. This has no research to back it up or experience. But I feel like the fact that it's also relaxing you, but wait, is weed a stimulant or a depressant? My first episode of this podcast was so educated, and this one is totally not. This is not well worded at all. But I think last time with friendships, it was all my experience and stuff that I was very, very sure of. But I feel like alcohol and partying is something that I've had experience with, but I'm still going into the situations and events and stuff that are very pivotal and are set up as, like, the important things, like schoolies and, like, uni parties and stuff like that. And I've just gone through all, like, the year 12 parties and stuff like that. So it's something that is happening very much now, and I am very much right now navigating that, and navigating, like, the party scenes and stuff like that. But yeah, I feel like weed is arguably better, as it's not a poison. Please correct me if I'm wrong, and please don't take this as go do weed. Don't do that. Don't do that. I shouldn't have even used that. Don't soundbite that. But I feel like weed, although it does have its negative consequences, and I know this for sure because we studied it in psychology, and it has freaked me out ever since, and is one of the main reasons why I haven't ever touched weed, is because I'm so scared of me having a genetic disposition to schizophrenia that I'm not aware of, and I'm so scared that because I'm male, because I'm in the age group that is susceptible to schizophrenia, the only other thing that you need is genetic disposition. I'm so scared that if I have weed, it's gonna precipitate. It's going to onset schizophrenia in me. And it's like, I'm not sure whether I said this to my brother or my dad or both, but I told them this fear, and they were like, no, you don't, like, you won't get schizophrenia, Tom. Like, don't be stupid. Not saying that they were supporting me going and smoking weed or something like that, but they were like, no, you wouldn't. And I was like, how do you know? Because, like, I assume that not many people in my family have consumed weed, especially in that period, especially who are male and in that age bracket where they're most susceptible. How am I supposed to be 100% certain that there wouldn't be negative consequences like that? And I think that's like anything. Like, there's going to be negative consequences, and it's about recognizing that and weighing up the positives and negatives. I had to think about what the opposite of that was. But yeah, I feel like and I've always said this, and I have always said this. Oh shit, me dick. I swear I'm not high right now. I would do weed before smoking cigarettes. 100%. This has become unhinged with Chris Clements because I can't keep on topic. I'd do weed before I smoke cigarettes. 100%. I feel like the smell of cigarettes is so disgusting, and I've also just studied so much about. I had my like focus topic for my detailed study for Indonesian in Year 12 this year was about cigarettes and smoking in Indonesia and comparing that with smoking in Australia, and boy was that propaganda for never smoking. I mean, it was crazy. But yeah, I just feel like inhaling anything into your lungs is I'm so scared of it. And that's where, like, if I was to do weed, I definitely want to do, like, edibles or something like that. Also because I love brownies. And yum. I'm not sure how much the taste would be affected. I was offered weed once, and I didn't accept it. No, I don't regret it. Because I want to do it, like, in brownies, and I wouldn't want to inhale it. Just because of, like, smoking, and I feel like that affects, like, singing very much and stuff like that. And I feel like it's just like not good for your lungs. And in my family, there's been like a long history of asthma and stuff like that. So I feel like I don't want to contribute to that in any way. And like I feel like with the inhaling of stuff, that definitely relates to vaping and the popularity of that. And I feel like there is going to be a growing shift away from vaping, if not already. And you know, although I tried it a couple of times, like at the end of like last year and like here and there at the start of this year with like Year 12 parties, I really began to just like reject it because it's so damaging, both with like addiction and like the battery acid in it, but also just like the inhaling of it, like how much we don't know about it is so worrying. I feel like I have been consumed by so much propaganda, but also so like I have been exposed to so many of my friends' experiences with vaping who have done it habitually and who have, you know, done it quite often, and just their experiences with like fitness and cardiovascular health and just addiction and stuff like that is so interesting, especially with people at my school. I know there was people who were like, not in my year level, but in like year levels below. Like there was year 8s like last year who were vaping in the bathrooms, and that is so scary that, you know, they're doing this and they need to get their fix. I know there was one person, I'm just exposing everyone. But there was like one person who would like leave class every 20 minutes, from like, I'm not going to say the year level. But like they would leave class like 20 minutes, like every 20 minutes to go to the toilet, not to go to the toilet, but to have a hit of their vape because they were that addicted and they like needed their fix. And that just like, that freaks me out so much, being so reliant on something like that. And yeah, I'm not sure where it stems from, but I'm really, really scared of having an uncontrollable addiction to something. But in saying that, I feel like screen time could easily be like a similar, like, I feel like that would be my closest addiction. But yeah, as I was saying, in terms of weed, edibles would be my choice because of the same reasoning for vapes, that I don't want to inhale anything. And yeah, I feel like the vape industry is definitely targeting themselves toward the vapes are definitely targeted towards younger people, obviously, and I feel like that's really, really damaging. But I think it's also understanding that people will do it regardless. But all that I can say for people watching, oh sorry again, for people who are watching and listening, is that you need to consider what you're getting into, and you know what isn't known and what is known, about the behaviors and the activities that we involve ourselves in and that we engage in. And on the topic of drugs, I feel like psychedelics, I love the concept of psychedelics. I'm not sure if you feel the same, but psychedelics, like, and the visuals that go along with it are so cool on, like, all the documentaries. That's my experience. But I remember doing a project in, like, year 7 or 8. Shout out to Sam, who worked with me on the project and did a lot of the work. But, like, it's so interesting and fascinating how, like, we have all these, like, perceptual and cognitive distortions to, like, just this little bit of, like, a plant or, like, to a mushroom or something. It's so interesting. Yeah. But in the same way as, like, weed, I feel like that could definitely onset something in me and others that really, really shits me, not shits me tears. Like, it makes me really, really scared. So I think that's something to think about. And yeah, I feel like that's all I wanted to talk about today. I feel like maybe I should check over my notes one more time. But yeah, like, I feel like regardless of what behavior you're engaging in, whether it is clubbing or partying or alcohol or drugs, or smoking or vaping or anything like that, once again, as much as I don't want to say it, due to me repeating it throughout this entire episode, I think go in with good intentions, and yeah, just look out for your friends, look out for yourself, and think about why you're engaging in certain habits. You know, what are you hoping to achieve out of that, and be really, really honest with yourself in that. So yeah, these are some of my experiences. If you do have any, like, questions or stuff that like I didn't really cover that you feel like we should talk about, you can put it in the comments, or you can send me a message. But yeah, love you very much, and I'll see you next time on the Nether Region podcast. Bye. Mwah. Love you.